chapters 8, 9, and 10, political parties, voting and elections, public opinion, and government. Please write down political party and the definition next to it, two-party system and its explanation, third parties and the explanation next to it. Chapter 8, Political Parties. Growth of American political parties. A political party, a group of people with broad shared interest who join together to help candidates win elections and shape government policy. The first political parties in the United States were the Federalist and the Democratic Republican. The United States has a two-party system. In the U.S., two major parties have competed for power during most of the nation's history: the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The U.S. Constitution does not mention political parties. We also have third parties. A third party is a political party that challenges the two major parties. Some parties form to promote a particular cause. These are known as single-issue political parties. Some are formed by people with certain ideology or set of beliefs about government. Some examples are the Reform Party, the Libertarian Party, the Socialist Party, the Communist Party USA, Prohibition, and the Green Parties. Please write down the last bullet listed in red. Other party systems. Political parties exist in most countries, but the two-party system is rare. Most democracies have multi-party systems with 3 or more parties. For example, France has more than 8. Canada has 3 major parties. Some nations have only a one-party system, like China. China has the Communist Party. All candidates are from the same party. Please write down platform and its definition, and plank and its definition. Party differences in the United States. The two major parties differ in their ideas about how the government should be involved in the economy and in citizens' lives. Both parties are national parties, which mean they usually field candidates in elections throughout the country. Each party has a platform that is created when they nominate a presidential candidate every 4 years. Platform. It is a series of statements expressing the party's core beliefs and its positions on various issues. Plank. An issue in a party's platform, like abortion or energy. Please write down National Committee and the explanation next to it. And then please write down the highlighted section that starts with at the National Convention and delegates. Organization of political parties. Major parties organize at the local, state, and national levels. They all have similar political beliefs and want to help their party win elections to as many offices as possible. National Committee. Each party has a national committee that raises money for presidential elections and organizes the party's national convention. At the national convention, delegates choose the party's candidates for president and vice president. This past year, Milwaukee was chosen for the Democratic Party, and Charlotte was originally chosen for the Republican Party. Delegates are chosen through presidential primary elections, or caucuses. A meeting of political party members to conduct party business. I will have you write down caucuses on this slide as well and its definition. They also try to elect members of Congress. State and local organizations. The 50 state committees work to elect party candidates to state offices, governors, state legislatures, and others. At the local level, parties have thousands of city, town, and county committees. Precincts, a geographic area that has a specific number of voters. Precinct captains help build the party on the local level. Please write down all of the information on this slide listed in red. One of the major jobs of political parties is to nominate or choose candidates for office. Both parties support candidates and issues that are not too extreme. Liberals are known typically to be in the Democratic Party, and conservatives are typically known to be in the Republican Party. These are just a couple of observations in which people tend to place people who are liberal or conservative normally. Parties typically use the direct primary, an election in which voters choose candidates to represent a party in a general election. There are two forms of primaries, open and closed. In a closed primary, only party members can vote in their party's primary. They have to declare their party. In an open primary, any registered voter can vote in that primary. The candidate who wins the primary is typically the one who gets the plurality or most votes. In a few states, the winner must have the majority of the votes, more than 50%. Third parties can also get on the ballot through the power of the petition. Please write down the last bullet listed in red on this slide, acting as a watchdog, and the explanation next to it. Other political party functions. They support candidates. It helps them win elections, raise money, volunteer in campaigns. They communicate with people. They help citizens and candidates talk to each other through speeches, printed materials, and ads. They help run different parts of the government. They play a role in running the government, Congress and the executive branch, for example. They link different levels of government. Parties help officials at different levels or branches of government to work together. Acting as a watchdog. Between elections, one party may be out of power. They act as a watchdog over the party in power, making sure they don't abuse their power. Chapter 9, Voting and Elections. Who can vote? Casting a vote is at the core of American citizenship. The right to vote gradually expanded to all Americans over the years. When an American citizen turns 18, he or she has a right to vote in all local, state, and national elections. Some groups of people are not eligible or qualified to vote. In some states, people who have committed serious crimes are not eligible to vote while imprisoned. People who suffer certain mental illnesses may lose their eligibility. Immigrants who have come to the U.S. cannot vote until they become citizens. Steps in the voting process. The 3 steps to voting are registering, preparing, and casting your ballot. Registering. Except for North Dakota, all states require citizens to register before they can vote. It is different from one state to the next. Some states let people register on election day. You can register in person or by mail in some states. Preparing to vote. Once you have registered, you are ready to vote. When preparing to vote, you should learn as much as you can about the candidates and the issues. You can find information online through speeches, TV, radio, and newspapers. Please write down the two sentences that are highlighted in red on this slide. Casting your ballot. On election day, people vote at polling places. Polling places are set up in schools, community centers, fire stations, and other public buildings. Ballot. A ballot is a list of candidates' names that shows their political party and the office they are seeking. Citizens who cannot get to the polls on election day can vote by absentee ballot. A list of registered voters are used by election officials to prevent people from voting more than once during the election cycle. Why your vote counts. Every vote counts. Voting is a right and a responsibility of citizenship. It gives you a chance to choose your government leaders and express your satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the office holders. It gives you a voice in how your community, state, and country are run. Voter turnout rate. The percentage of eligible voters who actually do vote. The U.S. rate is under 50%. Apathy or lack of interest is one of the reasons for this. Please write down primary elections and the definition next to it. Please write down initiative, referendum, and the definitions next to each of them. There are more than 500,000 elected officials in the United States. Types of elections: primary and general elections. Primary elections. The purpose of the primary elections is to choose one candidate from each party to run in the general election or for office. General elections take place on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. National elections are held in even-numbered years. Two special processes give voters a direct voice in governing. Initiative. An initiative is a process that lets voters propose new laws or amendments to state constitutions. The proposed law is called a proposition. Referendum. A referendum asks voters to accept or reject a law passed by a state or local legislature. Special elections. Sometimes states have what are called recall elections. A recall is when people vote on whether to remove an official from office. Also, sometimes an official dies in office or resigns. A special election may be held to replace those individuals. Please write down presidential elections, electoral college, and all of the information highlighted in red on this slide. When voters cast their ballots in a presidential race, They are actually electing special representatives called electors. Electors represent their state in the Electoral College. Each state has the same number of electoral votes as it has members of Congress. Washington, D.C. has 3 electoral votes. There are 538 total electoral votes. A candidate needs 270 to win the presidency outright. When a person votes for a Republican presidential candidate, for example, they are voting for a Republican elector to represent his or her state in the Electoral College. The purpose of the popular vote, the votes cast directly by the people, is to choose the electors. In most states, the winner of the popular vote in a state wins all of that state's electors in a winner-take-all system. Some opponents of the Electoral College feel that large states have more influence than small states and would like to see it changed. Here is a picture of the 2020 Electoral College map with Joe Biden winning the presidential election. Running for office. Please write down the first bullet and the last bullet highlighted in red on this slide. An election campaign is a candidate's effort to win an election. In 2008, for example, the candidates for president raised and spent more than $1.5 billion. Typically, a candidate must meet the qualifications for office. They also must figure out how much support they have and potentially beat out other candidates in primaries. After being chosen, they hit the campaign trails. They make speeches, give interviews, debate opponents, and appear at community events. They canvass neighborhoods for votes, advertise on TV, and boost their image by getting endorsements. Campaign finance. Campaigns have gotten more expensive and cost thousands of dollars. Individuals, companies, unions, and political action committees collect money for candidates and their campaigns. Chapter 10, Public Opinion in Government. Please write down all of the information highlighted in red on this slide. Public opinion refers to the ideas and attitudes that people hold about an issue or person. It helps shape the decisions that officials make. It helps shape how successful an official is in putting his or her plans into action. Many factors influences a person's opinion. Number one, personal background and age. Number two, mass media. Number three, interest groups. Public opinion is often described in terms of 3 factors. Direction refers to whether public opinion is positive or negative. Intensity, how strong a person or group holds an opinion. And stability is a matter of how firmly people hold their views. Public opinion polls, a survey in which individuals are asked to answer questions about a particular issue or person. Members of the media and politicians refer to poll results to check on people's attitudes. Pollsters, specialists whose job it is to conduct polls. Presidents use them to find out how the public feels about programs that the president is considering. Pros and cons. Some people feel polls are useful because they can address things like job approval, can be broken down by particular groups and categories. Some people feel that they are not useful because it forces politicians to focus on pleasing the public and that it may have a negative impact on how people vote. The candidate has a big lead, focus on the polls instead of the issues may be their focus. Please write down public agenda and the explanation next to it. The influence of the media. There are two types of mass media, print and electronic. Print includes magazines, newspapers, newsletters, and books. Electronic includes radio, television, and the internet. Most American media outlets are private businesses and they are run to make a profit. Media managers often decide what to publish based on what will attract the most viewers, listeners, and readers. Public agenda. Problems and issues that receive the most time, money, and effort from government leaders. The media can influence which problems officials regard as important. Once identified, they expect the government to deal with them. Please write down the third bullet with the red highlighted information on this slide. The influence of the media. The media can influence who runs for office by providing exposure to their campaigns. Officials try to use the media to their advantage to communicate their messages and to leak information to reporters to test public reaction to an idea. Reporters can also present officials in a bad light as well. The media also plays a crucial watchdog role. They keep a close eye on government activities. They report on waste, corruption, and wrongdoing. The government uses the media to shape narratives on matters of national security concerns. Protecting the press. The First Amendment says that Congress cannot pass any law that would limit the freedom of the press. Because of the First Amendment, the media are free from prior restraint, which refers to government censorship of material before it is published. Freedom of the press is not unlimited, though. We cannot commit a libel, which is printing lies. Shield laws. Most states have shield laws that protect reporters from having to reveal their sources. Federal Communications Commission, FCC. It is a regulatory agency that oversees broadcasters. Please write down interest group and the definition next to it. Interest groups are a group of people who share a point of view and unite to promote that point of view. The First Amendment guarantees Americans the right to assemble and to belong to interest groups. The right to petition allows those groups the right to meet with officials. Some groups are based on shared economic goals, businesses and workers. People also join together to work for the rights of people who share similar characteristics. Some groups are focused on particular interests. Public interest groups work to benefit the larger sections of society. Please write down all of the information highlighted in red. Number 3 and number 5, along with lobbyist. Interest groups play an important role in our country, influencing decisions that leaders make. They are active in elections, supporting different candidates, initiatives, and raising money. They try to shape policy by bringing cases to court to change policies or outdated laws. They lobby officials at the local, state, and national levels to attempt to influence government officials. Lobbyists. Lobbyists are people who represent interest groups. They want to convince people that their cause is important and work to provide useful information to support their efforts. Typically, when they contact members of Congress, they present one side of an issue. Propaganda techniques used to promote candidates or ideas. These are several types of techniques that we will cover in more detail. Please write down all of the bullets highlighted in red on this slide and their explanation. Symbols, endorsement, bandwagon, glittering generality, political advertisements can be very useful to politicians. Propaganda techniques. Symbols. Items like the American flag or Pledge of Allegiance used by candidates to appeal to the public. Endorsement. The idea with endorsement is that if people admire the person endorsing a candidate or product, they will support the candidate or product. Bandwagon. Convincing people that everyone else agrees with the candidate, viewpoint, or interest group. Be on the winning team. Glittering generality. A statement that sounds good but is essentially meaningless. Just plain folks. The idea is to make people think that the candidate is just like them, with the same desires and concerns. Stacked cards. Technique that presents only one side of the issue, often by distorting the facts. Political advertisements can be very useful to politicians. They reach large numbers of voters. They present dramatic images of candidates, often one-sided, and they are expensive. Please write down the last bullet on this slide highlighted in red. Regulating interest groups. The Constitution guarantees or promises Americans the right to take part in interest groups. Both the state and federal government have laws about what they can and cannot do. There are limits on candidate contributions. Some require lobbyists to register with officials who have authority to oversee them. They must outline who they work for, how much they are paid, and how they spend money related to their work. Federal and state laws also require former government officials to wait for a period of time before they can become lobbyists.